is Rebecca Schissel-Marshall with Whole Body Upgrade, a podcast to help you get unstuck, feel better, and have more energy. Let's get started. Welcome to Whole Body Upgrade. I'm Rebecca Schissel-Marshall. And we'll begin by welcoming in the great directions. I welcome in the great direction of the east, the direction of the south and west and north. And I welcome in the direction that is above and the direction that is below, as well as the direction that is within. I ask all of the helping and compassionate spirits to guide us today so that whatever needs to be said can be said, whatever needs to be heard will be heard. And I ask our ancestors who have lived well and died well to join us in supporting us in living this life that is in alignment with our true nature. And I also acknowledge that we are on the land of the Creek in the Cherokee in what is now known as Athens, Georgia. So hello, dear friends. It is spring here in Georgia. I know it's February. I am so grateful to be with you here today. It is a gorgeous spring day here. I've been sitting on my back deck the last couple of days, relaxing and reading and learning and working and doing what really lights me up. The sun is out, the birds are singing, and the temperature is just right. It's just glorious. So this is all part of my week. This has been kind of the goal of the last couple of days, to tend to myself in deeply nourishing ways. Part of the reason that I needed to tend to myself is I had a really rough start to the week, and also January was really hard. When I went through that jury selection process on Monday of this week, it was really challenging. And there are lots of pieces to that. I'm a very sensitive soul. There's lots of conflict. There were big questions being asked just during jury selection about bias and about our view of the criminal justice system and whether we were biased, which not if we were biased, but if we viewed the criminal justice system as bias, which is a really big question for me right now. It's like looking at all of these different systems that we have set up in the United States and how they are all biased. So I decided to take some time and really nourish myself, not just a little bit, but in as much nourishment as I possibly could. So I've been spending time in the woods. I've been with friends, meeting with friends. I've been listening, really listening, slowing down and listening to my guides, listening to the trees, listening to my own whispers of the heart, and really listening to my soul. I knew I needed time for myself because I was noticing old anxiety and stress patterns were arising again, and I couldn't seem to get settled in my body. I couldn't seem to get grounded. So again, it's a sure sign for me to hit pause. And this is something I've been noticing really in the last couple of months, is that my nervous system just needs more tending to than it has previously. So what I noticed is my brain wants to tell me, of course, that something is wrong and that there is something wrong with me. That is the siren song of the brain. But the truth is, for me, that my brain likes to tell me lies. This is something that I've trained with different people, and everyone calls it something a little different. One of the Buddhist monks that I have really enjoyed following and learning from for the last 20 or so years, she talks about it called egocentric karmic conditioning self-hate, right? Which is a mouthful. It's a lot. And I've talked about it before on the podcast, but it's this not part of us that has this negative viewpoint on ourselves, and is part of the conditioning. Part of that is that we've been conditioned to believe it, right? It's societal conditioning, it's parental conditioning, it's, ancestral conditioning, everything. And then there's the actual brain that has negativity bias. We'll get more to that. The more that I connect, though, the more that I connect with nature, the more that I connect with presence, right? With being as mindful and as present as possible. And the more I connect with my soul, the more I can laugh at and recognize the lies of the brain, the lies of egocentric karmic conditioning, with deep compassion for myself, for others, and a great amount of understanding. So as I said, I was reading a book, and this is a book called, it's by Sarah Seidelman, and it's called Freak, I think. But one of the things she talks about is tending to the soul. So the work that I've been doing is tending to my own soul. As I was reading her book out in the sun and really feeling nourished, is that it's the deep work that I do for myself, right? This is what I do, is tend to my soul. And it's exactly what I do for my clients as well. So there is this place, this opportunity for so much magic in the slowing down, in the listening, in the being present, and in nourishing ourselves, right? Mind, body, spirit, energetic, soul level nourishing. My particular ways that I nourish myself, that I nourish my soul, may not be the way you nourish your soul. My husband loves adventure races. It feeds his soul so deeply. Like, he goes out for 8 hours with like just a compass and a map, and he kayaks and he trail runs and he mountain bikes, like out in the wilderness where, he could get lost. That is not nourishing to me. That is not my soul nourishing way of being. It feeds him, but that would leave me with a panic attack, right? So we all have souls with these individual differences. When I was in graduate school, we talked a lot about cognition, about individual differences, and we tried to measure them, and we tried to replicate them, and we tried to figure out where these different differences occurred and what the needs were of different people. And we were looking at memory and working memory. Sometimes we can describe this. We forget, I think, that this is what's happening for individuals on all levels, that it's not a one size fits all for how we can nourish ourselves. And sometimes the work becomes in determining what those soul nourishing needs are. And then the next level of work is actually doing them, right? Because that can be a real challenge. So I'll give you an example of that I always tell my students when I'm teaching mindfulness at the university. For me, one of the things that I do is I will, even though I know how good soul tending is, even though I know how much I enjoy it, how blissful it can be, I will scroll social media for hours as a way to even avoid soul tending. Now, why? Why would someone who is a soul tender do that? Well, because it's way easier to scroll social media, right? It's the default. It's easy. It's also habitual and addictive. And there's a whole lot of dopamine that gets created from all of that scroll, pressing likes and having other people comment on so there's a whole thing. And as I said, it's easier than cooking a nourishing meal. It's easier than tending to what nutrients I need to help balance my emotions. It's easier than tending to uncomfortable beliefs and emotions that are coming up in my life that may be blocking me from doing the big and scary thing. So why would anyone do soul tending work if it's hard? And my experience has been because what's on the other side is so rewarding. So let me give you this example. It's like changing the type of food that you eat. I do this a lot with my clients, and it isn't always easy. It requires meal prep, planning, and then actually eating the food that might be different from what you're used to eating and maybe doesn't sound as appealing as just ordering from an app on your phone and getting takeout or delivery. And here's the thing. The physical, emotional, mental, energetic, and spiritual rewards from making the food changes are huge. And not in like years, but in the course of 2 to 3 weeks, huge, right? So a lot of effort, short period of time, big reward. And if I can get clients to try this, to use their mental strength, use their emotional strength, clear out some of the energy that's there, then they can see the rewards and start to feel like, oh, this is why I'm doing this thing. What I've also noticed is that eating this nourishing food is not only incredibly healing for bodies, for our physical body, it's also incredibly healing to souls. It's why I'm so passionate about eating nourishing, healthy, whole foods. It influences our bodies, our souls, our minds, our hearts. It's deeply healing on not just the physical layer, but on this deeply cellular layer, but also this emotional layer. The very interesting thing is that the same can be true for tending your soul. Tending to the soul is incredibly healing to the physical body. All of the aches and the pains, the disorders, the autoimmune disorders and syndromes, those can change when you take care of and tend to the soul, this soul level work. And that can include things like when you are in alignment with your purpose, when you take time to finally feel your emotions and process old patterns from your ancestors or from your family, and navigate the old beliefs that have been layered on top of us over time, societally, familially, right? They just keep getting placed on us. When we start to look at those and peel them back, our physical body starts to heal in ways that we never thought was possible, right? Even Western medicine can't explain this because they say, well, it's not like, you can't reverse arthritis, but with diet and tending to the soul, there is actually a way to reverse it. So this tending to the soul is something that can feel really challenging because, as I've talked about previously on the podcast, it's not something that we really talk about in society. It's not necessarily valued, and it's definitely not something we're taught to do. The focus in our society, in American society, has been on productivity, really, measured by money, degrees, certificates, progress, size of your house, what you look like even. So often I've asked my coaches and teachers, people I've gone to, how am I supposed to do this? And it feels so uncomfortable because it's not what we're originally taught, right? It's so different. And it's so different from how many of us are raised, and I know how I was raised. So you can start with one thing each day. This is like the very, if you're at the beginning of this, you might not have any soul nourishing practices yet, or maybe you have a lot of them and you can add on to this. But let's start with one thing each day. At the beginning, it might be including something that takes less than 5 minutes, right? Something that feels nourishing. What feels delicious? What feels amazing and takes less than 5 or 10 minutes, right? So it doesn't have to be like going on a trip to Hawaii for a week. It can be sitting outside in the sun for 1 minute in the middle of the workday, right? You notice this is a theme in a lot of my podcasts. How can you make this bite-sizable, right? Tiny little steps that are actually doable so that it doesn't get so big and overwhelming. So sitting outside in beautiful weather, or even on a cold day and looking at the trees, right? Reading a good book, or listening to a podcast, or having a delicious, healthy meal, right? Something that feels really good to you. Or it could be walking, or doing yoga for 5 minutes, or turning on your favorite music and dancing in the living room. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to feel nourishing. This is one way that you can start to tend to your own soul, start to really listen. Sitting in silence is another really good way to start to tend to your soul so that you can be there for those parts of you that show up. And I've talked about that in previous episodes as well, where you might find that there's a young part of you who's like, I want to go bike riding. So how can you show up for her and be like, yeah, let's borrow a bike. Let's go bike riding, so that you have that fun and playfulness. And this is basically where I have found that having someone to support me or finding someone for you is key. I am a soul tender. Like when I read that language in Sarah Seidelman's book, was like, oh, that's what I've been trying to explain. I help people tend to their souls. This looks like a variety of things. It might be finding anti-inflammatory food to help reduce their pain from that arthritis. Or it might be an energetic repair and clearing through shamanic practices, some component of soul healing that's on that energetic and spiritual level. Sometimes it might be teaching them what they love, sitting on the deck for 5 minutes, right? Our brains are wired literally made. This is how our brains are made, to look for the negative, right? It's called negativity bias. It's hilarious. I mean, it's not hilarious when we're in it, but it's hilarious that our brains are set up for this. It's a survival strategy that served us well for many years, right? We had to keep on the lookout for predators and prey in order to keep safe. Our modern society isn't set up in that way. So now all those negativity pieces of, well, I can't do that. Oh, well, that's never going to work, just gets in the way of us actually thriving. That's why it can be so helpful to have someone to lead you step by step as you get to tend to your soul. It just makes it so much easier to get to the other side of whatever it is that you want to accomplish. I see soul tending as a deeply compassionate and beautiful art, and it happens to be one of my callings. Years ago, my guides called me outside at a yoga retreat center, Kripalu, and the snow and the wind were whipping around. And I was there for a shamanic training, and they were whispering to me in these, as the snow was almost forming these little tornadoes, this amazing display of nature and the element of wind. And they made it clear that this is part of my work, that this is what I'm here to do. So I'm inviting you to step into this possibility of feeling guided and supported, where you feel energetic and on purpose, and you wake up feeling that way, and that you take time and schedule in cooking for yourself and healthy cooking and moving your body in a way that is loving and kind, and scheduling soul nourishment for yourself, whatever that looks like. You can wake up one day, and just like I felt when I went through this, you can wake up and realize you've gotten to the other side, that you feel more settled and calm, that you have this amazing set of tools and skills available to you. That's what I want for you. Okay, my friends, don't wait to tend to your soul. It's waiting for your time and for your attention. If you don't know where to start, I'd love to invite you to a free mini session. It's called the Destuckification Call. It's short, but it's powerful. And that way, even if you're really busy, you can set aside 20 minutes so that we can do some tending to your soul. It's simple and easy, and I'll put the link in the show notes below. Okay, dear ones, take good care of yourself, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Whole Body Upgrade. If you'd like to learn more about working with me, you can visit me on Facebook or Instagram, or on my website, CenteredYou, that's CenteredYou.com. See you on the next episode of Whole Body Upgrade.